Welcome to This Explainer. If you're tuning in today, there's a good chance that you, or maybe someone you care deeply about, is carrying a really heavy weight right now. Grief is this entirely universal human experience. But strangely enough, it's something we are almost never taught how to handle properly. So today, we're diving straight into a really powerful resource. It's a book called Grieving God's Way, a 30-Day Journal Through Grief by Coach-Sheryl Sarmento. And this book tackles a pretty tough truth head-on. We are often mishandling our pain, and honestly, it's costing us deeply. So let's just address the elephant in the room right off the bat. How long should grief really last? Think about your own life for a second. Society constantly bombards us with these conflicting, totally confusing messages, right? We're expected to just bounce back, show how resilient we are, and basically just move on. But when someone we love is suddenly gone, or massive life change completely shatters our reality, does a quick, neat little timeline actually work? And this comparison brilliantly illustrates the core of the problem. Over on the left, we've got our Western expectations. What do you get? Maybe 3 days of bereavement leave from work. You're supposed to stuff all those messy emotions down and get over it as fast as possible. But look over on the right at the biblical reality that Sarmento outlines in her book. This ancient tradition actually encourages a highly intentional 30-day period of mourning. It's about weeping freely and genuinely processing the pain. So the takeaway here is crucial. Swallowing our grief just to make society comfortable can actually cause severe physical and emotional damage, whereas these biblical traditions give us a real framework to sit with the pain so we can actually heal. Here's our quick roadmap for today's explainer. We'll be covering 1. The modern grief problem. 2. A 30-day biblical path. 3. Practical tools for mourning. 4. Finding comfort in Scripture. 5. Journaling through the pain. And 6. Supporting those who grieve. Let's get right into it. Starting off with Section 1, the modern grief problem, looking specifically at the danger of rushing this whole process. Coach-Sheryl Sarmento highlights a really stark reality in her book. She says, not knowing how to properly grieve can cause all sorts of other issues in life. Because here's the thing, swallowed grief doesn't just mysteriously disappear. It literally harms our bodies. The book points to a startling, very real medical phenomenon, broken heart syndrome. Think back to when actress Carrie Fisher died. Her mother, the legendary Debbie Reynolds, passed away just 1 day later. The stress of unexpressed, overwhelming grief can literally be deadly. We are simply not biologically designed to hold all that immense pressure inside. Let's move over to Section 2 and see how this builds into the core solution, a 30-day biblical path featuring timeless traditions for healing. This brings us to an absolutely profound concept, shaloshim. It's the Hebrew word for 30. And in ancient traditions, it represents a dedicated secondary period of intentional mourning. For 30 full days, you intentionally delay major life decisions. You don't force yourself to go out to social events where you have to paste on a fake happy face. Carving out this specific, protected block of time for grief is just an incredible gift to your own healing process. And tucked right inside those 30 days is an even more concentrated period. You've probably heard the term sitting Shiva. This refers to the intensely focused first 7 days of mourning. This is time specifically set aside just to stay home. You look at old photos, you play music that reminds you of your loved one, and you simply sit in the sorrow with the support of your community around you. It's an absolutely crucial first step on this 30-day path to ensure you don't just completely bypass the initial shock. That brings us to Section 3. Now that we have the timeline down, what do we actually do? Let's look at practical tools for mourning. The source text introduces an incredibly powerful physical action called kriya. It's a Hebrew word that translates to tearing. In biblical times, people would literally physically tear their clothing at the very first moment of intense grief. And why? Because when your heart feels torn in two, your body physically needs an outlet for that. We aren't made to bottle up that kind of explosive pain. Tearing is the first outward physical expression of a broken heart. So here is how you can practically apply this tool in your life right now. First, just get a piece of cloth, or honestly, even a piece of paper works. Bring it right up over your heart area, then tear it, and physically release your emotions out loud. Sarmento shares this remarkable story in the book about a friend who was just completely, entirely numb. She couldn't shed a single tear until she physically ripped a cloth over her heart. And the moment she did, the dam broke, and those healing tears finally began to flow. This kind of physical release is something we've largely lost today. Just think about modern funerals. They are often filled with this stiff, awkward silence and maybe some very quiet tears. We sit there, totally uncomfortable, not knowing what to do. But biblical mourning, it was loud. They actually hired professional, skillful wailing women. There were loud groans, free weeping, the whole shebang. And research actually backs this up. Emotional tears contain stress hormones and toxins that physically need to exit the body. Sighing and loud crying literally release that built-up physical stress. Let's transition over to section 4, finding comfort in Scripture, which gives us divine permission to mourn. The crucial point here is perfectly captured in literally the shortest verse in the entire Bible. Jesus wept. It's so profound when you think about it. Jesus knew he was about to perform a miracle and raise Lazarus from the dead, right? Yet he still didn't skip the grief process. He cried. This single verse completely shatters that toxic modern lie that real men don't cry, or that showing emotion is somehow a weakness. No, it is divine permission to let the tears fall. And that leads right into this brilliant promise. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. But I want you to notice the condition attached there. Comfort is absolutely promised, yes, but it only comes to those who actually do the work of mourning. If you try to bypass the mourning by turning to food or endlessly scrolling on your phone or other addictions just to swallow your pain, you completely miss out on the deep comfort that only comes on the other side of true, authentic grief. Which leads us perfectly into section 5. If we have to do the work, how do we process it? Let's look at journaling through the pain. So the book actually operates as a 30-day devotional, prompting you with these daily reflection questions. What has changed in your life? Do you feel out of control? Are you swallowing your grief down? What are your burdens today? Sarmento uses these really specific probing questions because grief is just incredibly complex. You might be dealing with compound grief from multiple losses back to back, or unresolved past trauma like a miscarriage, or even the devastating loss of a beloved family pet. Actually, writing down your answers forces you to confront your reality head-on, which is absolutely vital for finding eventual closure. Finally, let's look outward to section 6, supporting those who grieve. How do we actually help others navigate this 30-day journey? The source material shares this incredibly profound piece of ancient rabbinic wisdom. Do not comfort the mourner during the time that his deceased lies before him. Now, what does that actually mean for us? It means that in the immediate, devastating aftermath of a death, the pain is just way too intense for words of consolation. Trying to say the right thing almost always backfires. Your silent presence is far, far better than forced words. To make this hyper-practical, let's contrast what we often default to hearing with what actually helps. We panic and rely on well-meaning cliches, right? I know exactly how you feel, or everything happens for a reason, or, well, at least they lived a long life. But these statements totally minimize a person's unique, deep pain. They invalidate what that person is actively going through. Instead, try simple validation. Just say, I am so sorry for your loss, and I'm here for you. Or, hey, it's okay not to be okay right now. And again, simply offering your silence and your presence. That kind of simple validation is what truly helps someone heal faster.
Which brings us to the end of our explainer with a very personal question for you to chew on. Are you ready to stop hiding your grief and start healing? Doing grief God's way, actually setting aside those 30 days, doing the Kriya, and tearing the cloth, letting the tears freely flow and journaling out those really hard truths, it isn't easy. It is incredibly heavy work. But as this book promises, it is the only true path to ensuring that eventually your mourning turns into genuine joy. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope it helps you or someone you love find the comfort you deserve.